Hi everyone, I want to talk about Texas today. So for those who don't know or those watching this in the future, basically Texas had a really bad winter storm, which is not normal for Texas, and their power grid suffered immensely. There were people that lost power for large amounts of time and were unable to take care of themselves because of this. And the power grid is something we've come to rely on for a long time. So I want to get into why did this happen. So let's start with number one.
So it was all working great until the day it got cold outside. The windmills failed, like the silly fashion accessories they are, and people in Texas died.
So this is false. Basically, a windmill can generate electricity, which means it can also generate heat. Think about a resistive heater in your house, like something you buy from Home Depot and plug into the wall. All it's doing is taking electricity and generating heat. So a windmill can actually do the same thing with the electricity it's generating and use some of that electricity to warm itself. In the event it were to be incapacitated or unable to perform its duties, it can use energy off the grid with pretty minimal impact. So, I mean, there are windmills in places like Canada where it freezes all the time, and they've simply equipped their windmills with devices like this. It's called integrated heating, and this is all Texas would have had to have done to avoid this. Okay, so number two. And this is power grid management, so I don't want to make it too complicated. And if you're wondering how I know all this, my dad has worked in the power industry for his entire career, and he gave me some good advice on this. So power grid has something called spinning reserves. And think of this as a gas pedal. So this gas pedal isn't normally pushed down very hard. But if it needs to be, it could be very quickly, and you would get the energy that you need immediately, or more or less immediately. So the idea of a spinning reserve is you have systems running and providing power to the grid. If they were to fail, these spinning reserves can quickly fire up, and they can make up for that loss by simply turning on turbines, things that can be done very quickly. So in Texas, they must not have had enough of this because a lot of their power failures were due to plants tripping because they couldn't cover the power need of the people. And that is what can happen. If there's too much being asked for, the plant can simply trip, leading to sort of a cascading failure. So in Florida, a state like Florida, you are required to have enough spinning reserves to cover either the largest power generator or the largest transmission line. And the idea of this is to simply have enough to cover people in this kind of situation. And in Texas, apparently that was not there. So let me summarize with this. And this is just preliminary right now. I'm sure there's a lot more evidence to come out. But one of their biggest issues was not weatherizing their grid. Windmills were a part of that, but they are not the entire story. And that is to say that they did not weatherize really any of their systems. There were a lot of other failures other than just the windmills. There were a lot of other power sources like natural gas that were not accounted for. And this is not even to talk about the clearing snow off the roads. This is something that a lot of other states do regularly. And although Texas may only have to do it every 10 years, there should be plans for this. I think natural gas, there was issues with supply lines, but again, this is just preliminary data. So let me just preface what I'm saying by saying I am not saying renewables are the answer to all of our problems at this very moment. They have issues, they certainly do. They can only generate electricity when the weather conditions are correct, and we don't really have the battery technology to store it just yet. So that is a real problem with renewables. Now, I personally, I think it will get better over time, but I am not saying that we should switch everything over to renewables just because the windmills could have worked. What I am saying is that this is, like many other failures of a system, this was more than one person's fault. This was not somebody suggested they use windmills, and therefore the windmills went down, and therefore they took out the rest of the power grid, and that was it. This was a systemic failure. This is basically, it fits the definition very well of a systemic failure. And I guess that is what I'm trying to say. Please don't go around to people making the argument that windmills were the reason that Texas had these issues. That is very, very far from the truth. So anyway, hope you like this video. Have a good night.